Welcome to today's special International Women's Day episode where we accelerate the progress for all women and girls' rights, equality, and advocacy. I'm Adora, and on today's episode, we'll be diving into the challenges, the impacts that International Women's Day has for women and girls. And we'll also be talking about the actions that are needed to push forward gender equality in leadership, STEM, and advocacy. So joining me today, we have Mr. Hanoch he's the male gender lead from Plan International Nigeria, a champion for gender equality, working to ensure policies and programs to create real impact for women and girls. And with us, we have Ms. Ojone Akor, STEM leader and COO at Data Lead Africa, a trailblazer in the tech industry, leading innovation while advocating for women in STEM. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. What moment in your life, what experience sparked the passion for gender advocacy in women's empowerment? To you, let's start with you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. There was a lot of moments for me actually that stood out when it comes to the need to advocate for gender equality and inclusion. And I can go on to share quite a lot, but one of the striking ones was the one that happened one time. We were having a community training for community stakeholders and volunteers that were going to support us in our quest to work with communities around issues of women and girls. So we needed to train these people on the rudiments of gender equality and inclusion. So in working with them, the particular session that stood out for me was a day in the life of a woman. So that activity enabled me to understand how important it is for women to be there in the society, the contribution they bring to the table, the kind of support they provide to the whole society at large. Because in that exercise, we saw that men were supposed to imagine a day without a woman, from waking up to sleeping later in the evening. So it helps us to really visualize the practicalities of a woman lived experience. So we saw how it changed the whole of our perspective. So the shift in perspective on the role of women and girls in society, and how, as a person, I need to be a voice for women and girls wherever I find myself. And then coming to Plan International, it provided me with greater opportunities to be able to do that, because this is an organization that is thoroughly focused on women and girls' rights, promoting it and advocating for it at all levels. So, and having the opportunity to also work across different levels, from the community level, state level, and the national level, I've had opportunities to interface with different people towards promoting the rights of women and girls. So, those were some of the moments that really stood out for me. And yeah.
I wanted to show your experience working with women and girls in communities. What has really stood out for you coming up?
Okay, so majorly, my experience has been working with women in tech,
Yeah.
right? And so reflecting on, should I say, my own personal journey, and then looking at the trajectory of things over time, I would say that there is no particular way, right, when it comes to this thing of gender, women in tech, women at work, and all of that. Every woman has, different things they face, different things they encounter as they evolve at work. Now, for me personally, I before coming here, I had this like quick moment when I was able to, just look back on my own childhood. And I remember there was once upon a time when I wanted to study computer engineering. And I remember telling my dad I wanted to study computer engineering, and he laughed. And the first thing he said was, how do you think you're going to look in overalls?
Wow.
Right? So from that moment on, it just felt like there's nothing for me in tech. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should just stick with the conventional things that I expected of, being a woman and all that.
Yeah.
So, but there's this thing about the universe, it's just very funny. No matter what, where you're meant to be, you're going to find yourself in that space at some point. So even stumbling into tech, because that's how I see it, I kind of like stumbled back into tech.
Yeah.
It wasn't really soft landing for me. There were a lot of objections, like, what are you doing? I also dealt with it myself, asking myself, am I in the right place? What am I doing here? And all that. But the thing about this working as a woman in the tech space is that you never really know how it's going to unfold.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yes.
And when I look at my own journey, where it started from until this point, I would say, of course, there are so many things that you can go through. There are so many experiences, so many things that you would face, right? That's
as a woman.
Yeah.
Let's talk about progress. When you talk about progress in women and girls empowerment community, would you say we are stagnant? Would you say we are moving forward? Would you say we are slow? Would you say we are fast? So when you hear the word progress and you hear about equality and it comes with women, what would you like?
Yeah, so sometimes you wish we are faster because when you look at the challenges that women and girls keep confronting, and as many as are dying as a result of gender inequality, you feel that we are not making a lot of progress. But then when you look at where we're coming from, for example, I can give you practical examples from when I was deeply involved in this work in promoting gender equality and inclusion far back as 2016. And then I measure the improvement I've witnessed within this period. I can tell you that there are lots of progress, a lot of improvement that I've witnessed, a lot of stories of girls who have had to receive empowerment in going back to school, and those ones who face different forms of gender-based violence, who have been supported and have been able to bounce back from the experience they went through. You can see that there are a lot of progresses. And then when you look at it from the policy point of view, looking back from 2016, the number of states that have passed the child rights law and the violence against people prohibition law in the different states was very low. And at the moment, we have almost all the states in Nigeria have passed the violence against people prohibition law. And you can see that these are tangible progress. That means we have a legal framework for women and girls who have experienced gender-based violence to receive the kind of support they need. And then the perpetrators of this violence are also brought to book. So there are a lot of progress I've seen in the course of my career. And I can attest to the fact that in terms of numbers, you can see the progress. We're not where we used to be, even though we're not where we want to be. But actually, we are moving forward to where we want to be. So,
you say relatively it's fast.
Not fast, but there is progress, however little.
Yes, we are making progress. I mean, there's a lot of gender empowerment programs happening at the moment, and several policies are coming up. So, and also looking at it from the STEM perspective of STEM, we have a lot of women coming into tech now, which is great and all that. But then, if I were to look at it from the leadership perspective, I would say we still have a male domineering system, right? So there are not a lot of women leaders at the moment. We're making progress in terms of people coming into the system. It's now us building a system where the woman can grow and thrive in her career to the point of senior leadership. That's, for me, I think that's where we are. We're not there yet. But people are coming in, yes. Because if you look at 20, 30 years ago, a lot of women weren't even into tech, weren't into STEM and all that. But now we have more women, right, in tech. Currently at my organization, Data Lead Africa, we have about 70% representation of women here, which I feel it's a very good number, right? But now this is just one space. What happens in other spaces, right? So, yeah.
So the theme says for all women, but when it comes to gender inequality, do you think you really include all women? What I mean by all women, I mean women with disabilities, women that come from low income, women that currently live in the rural area. Like, would you technically say it is like inclusive for all women? The equality is inclusive for all women, or it's just for people who are educated?
Okay, so I think Plan International's work that I've witnessed in the past years, you can confidently say that we have tried to be as intersectional as possible in our approach, because you cannot group women into a single group. No, women do not fit into a single group, because just like you explained, there are women from the rural communities, there are women who maybe are living in a place where they are not very privileged, and then those who are not as educated as others. So there are different layers that could lead to exclusion. But our approach in Plan International is to ensure intersectionality in the course of our work, making sure that we put into consideration the various factors and characteristics that makes women and girls to be excluded in project activities in our programs generally. So one of the things we try to do is to address multi-layered intersectional issues that limit the participation of women and girls, be it in our various programs, education, nutrition, even in leadership and policy. We continue to advocate with the government, making sure that we're able to tackle some of these different layers of challenges that women face and that limits them from actively participating in the process of development. So for us, it's an approach that we've continued to do, but then that required a lot of capacity strengthening of people who are working in this space to be able to consider all of these issues, because unfortunately, not everyone considers some of these issues in dealing with inequalities. So inequality does not affect everyone equally. So we have to factor the fact that everyone has different lived experience. So, and in considering those experiences, we may need to deal with different barriers and issues that are confronting women and girls at different levels. So, be it at the community level, for example, I remember there's a community that we wanted to intervene in. During our first meeting, we called for a meeting of stakeholders. Guess what? The stereotype played out, because it's all the men that they brought to these meetings, not a single woman. So we had to ask, what is happening? Don't you have women in this community? How can they be brought into this process? And then these are groups where decisions are made, decisions that affect both men and women alike. So, and they are excluded from that. So that was the start point of our work in that community. But I assure you, 3 months down the line, 4 months down the line, and even 2-3 years after the project had ended, we could tell you that we've strengthened the capacity of the community to understand the role of women in decision making, and then they are able to fully participate at different community level committees, and then that led to the change that we were desiring. Yeah, sometimes some of these changes are really slow, and their slow nature can make you discouraged. But as an organization that is committed to inclusion at all levels, we've tried to ensure intersectionality in our approach. Thank you.
So they're really slow, but what would you say makes it slow? Is it that they don't want to participate in the leadership roles, or they are scared, or they feel like they can't represent women or their community? Or is it the men in the community that is really stopping the women from participating?
Okay, so yeah, there are different factors. One of them is gender norms. Our communities are built around these cultural norms. And then because it's a process of socialization, men and women alike are taught to behave like men and women. So the communities have decided the culture, based on our culture, You have that there's an expectation for how a woman should behave, how she should live, and so on and so forth. So these norms are not things that you can dismantle in a day. It will require a lot of attitudinal changes. It will require a lot of building the women's agency themselves, and then rewiring them all together, and then working with the men themselves to have a change in attitude so that they are able to approach issues from a positive masculinity point of view. So basically, you don't leave anyone aside. While you're working with men and women, you're strengthening the capacity of women, you're addressing some of these gender norms and social norms that inhibits the progress that we want to see, and then you're working towards incorporating women to ensure that they are participating in decision making at the community level, enabling that environment for them to participate in decision making while strengthening their capacity across all board.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good, the things that you do for women. I see it, and it's really nice. So Ms. Ojone, on to you. So when it comes to STEM, how do we make sure that progress affects all women, not just some groups of women, not just those with privilege or people with access? How do we make it all inclusive?
Okay, so there are different levels to being a woman. There is, being a girl, becoming a woman, becoming a wife, a mother. There are different needs at different points, right? Now, looking at it, I would say a good way to make progress for STEM would be for us to have more policies that are supporting you at that level. So let's say, for instance, what are the policies in your organization for working mothers, right? For breastfeeding mothers, because they may fall under the same category, but their needs per time are different. Okay. And also, just trying to see as much as possible those biases that affect work, that limits them. So because you find out that sometimes the tech field is very fast.
Yes.
It's very vast, and things are happening really quickly. So several projects could come on board, and even before it's even brought open on the table, you just naturally assume, oh, a man is going to handle this better. And the woman is quickly sidelined, probably because she has kids or, one form of need or the other. How about we have policies that are more accommodating? How about we have policies that encourage women to, thrive, to be retained in the workspace?
Yeah.
Because you find out over the course of the years, I realized that most of the brilliant talents we've had were women. And if you don't have policies that can retain them simply because, oh, at this point she's nursing, or at this point she needs to go for school runs, you're going to lose talent, right? So we need to have more policies that promote inclusion. And then we also have another special group, which is women with disabilities. What is your organization doing about that? Those are the kind of conversations we need to start having. Women with disabilities, what do they need to work? What do they need to thrive in the corporate space, in politics? Is there representation for them at senior level? Are they being heard? Is it easy for them to meet someone or speak to someone about a need? Do they, there is a way you have something that you need, but you cannot express yourself because the environment or the condition does not allow you to open up. When you have representation at leadership level, it's easy because you feel seen and you feel heard, because you know that, oh, this person at the top understands what it feels like, or can to an extent relate with my needs. So I think these are things we need to look into if we really want to make progress. It's not just about saying we encourage all genders to apply. No, it's about, so if at the end of that recruitment process you have a working mom who is probably the best talent that's from that recruitment process, what accommodations do you have to have her work with you? So those are the things we need to look into, and those are the policies we need to push.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So what kind of structural changes do you think we need to put in place to be able to get progress with equality in women's rights and girls' rights?
First would be mentorship for young girls. mentorship for young girls. They need to even know that it's possible for you to get to a certain point. It's possible for you to dream and actually live in those dreams. So they need to see people like themselves, right, in those positions to know that, okay, this is actually doable, it's possible. Then I'm also looking at it. So, in terms of, say, let's say a woman who just got off maternity leave, right? Having probably maybe a care plan for her
Okay.
in terms
Yes.
of how to nurse her baby at what point.
Yeah.
Then the government can also step in by ensuring we have, crèche, places where they can keep their
In the
babies,
workplace.
yeah, within the
Yes.
the areas where the offices are located majorly, because we find that in city central most times we don't have crèche and all those places where you can drop your baby or daycare, right? We don't have as much, and then this is where the organizations are, and this is where women are. It's not rocket science that you see a lot of women opting for teaching roles and other roles that allow them to be closer
Yeah,
to
children.
their children. It's not rocket science. It's simple. It's because they already have a system that works for them. So they drop off their baby and then they go to work,
Yeah.
right? But now, a woman who wants to work in the tech space, who wants to work in the banking sector, where is she supposed to put her baby on her way to work? Right? These are the conversations we need to have. These are things we need to start thinking of. How can we make this place conducive so someone who needs to go for school drop off or pick ups earlier,
Yeah.
right? Because I know that a lot of times these schools are closing earlier than close of business, which is your regular 9 to 5, right? So some organizations are trying in this bit, but there's still a lot that needs
The
to
work done.
happen.
Yes.
Yeah, at Data Lead Africa, we also have policies that encourage working mothers, so they get to close earlier, right? So they can go for school pickups and all that. I think it's helpful if other organizations can emulate these
Yes.
traits.
Yes. 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 You have a point there.
Can I go on to add?
You want to add to that?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So, yeah, the workplace policies we have in Plan International are really, really, really women friendly. Yeah, in all respects, because in addition uh, to paid maternity leave, after 6 months of maternity leave, when a woman comes back from her leave, she has a breastfeeding period. And then there is a crèche that is there within the organization to just support breastfeeding mothers to be able to care for their young ones. And then generally we have good workplace policies that support equality, because in our bid to change the world, we have to start with ourselves. So, and as an organization, we have these policies in place where the anti-bullying, anti-harassment, these are things that are happening in workplaces that makes women not to be able to thrive at workplace. So, but when these policies are in place, and then we are not just having them in place, but they are actually implemented, and there is a leadership will to that also that helps. So organizations need to come on board on that, and then nationally we have policies also. We have the gender policy in Nigeria that was there since 2005, and then it was reviewed between 2021 and 2026. We're yet to reach there, but we have a document in Nigeria that supports gender equality and inclusion as it affects men, women, boys, and girls alike, including those with disabilities. So all these policies are there, but then we need to move towards the implementation framework for these policies. It's not enough to just have policies in place, but what framework do we have that to make sure that these policies are implemented? And what are the measures in place to ensure that anyone who does not live up to these policies, the law is also able to take its course? So that's what we need to begin to move towards. We have policies, organizations, corporate organizations, and international organizations alike. We need to begin to see how they can adopt some of these policies and laws from the international scene also.
So about that now, would you say there are businesses that actually keep these implementations? Do they like take actions with the implementations, or do they just tick boxes?
Yeah, so we need to move away from ticking boxes because if you tick a box, who has it helped? It's not
Nobody.
practical. So
Yes.
the reality of things will need to be seen, and people will need to experience some of these policies that are there as laws. I know it's on record that Nigeria as a country has a lot of good policies, but then when it comes to the implementation, that's where the issues are. Because most times there is no sufficient budget allocation, for example, to implement policies. I gave you an example earlier with the Child Right Law and the Violence Against People Prohibition Act that has been passed in different states. The current challenge we are facing now is how are they funded? In some states, there are committees that are responsible for implementing this. But then you have a committee that is not fully budgeted, that is not funded. How will they be able to realize the laws in these policies? And then you also have communities who are not aware that these laws exist. So another part of the work is to see how we sensitize communities using media, social media, the traditional media, and so on, to ensure that everyone is aware of this, and then all of us collectively are able to work towards achieving them.
Okay, just a follow up though. So let's say a company does. Let's say the company says they did not know about the policies, and then let's say a woman's right has been tampered with. What happens to the company, and what kind of or I say punishment goes along with that kind of situation?
Okay, so basically, like I mentioned, the issue of implementation has always been the issue, and then we need to have a strengthened system that is working, so that when there are violations of policies and laws, those who are violating these laws are actually dealt with accordingly. So we need to strengthen that part of it. There are organizations like in Plan, we have zero tolerance to harassment in workplace. So if a colleague harassed another colleague, there's actually zero tolerance to it. And then people have had to face it at different times because of that. So in addition to the laws, like I said earlier, we need to have the leadership will. So if there is a leadership will within an organization, within the country, to ensure that these laws are actually implemented, then we can have the result of violations also treated accordingly. If organizations can be inclusive in all their approaches, and then begin to look at gender equality not as a standalone, but as a part of everything you do, I think it will go a long way to creating the change we desire. So basically, there is hope if we incorporate gender equality and inclusion in everything we do, because it means that the world can change. Currently, it is estimated that it will require up to 130 years for us to reach where we ought to be in terms of gender equality and inclusion. That means that it's a call to action for everyone to be on board, everyone to put in all the needed efforts to make sure that we push the work of gender equality. And then the fact that gender inequality does not only affect women, it's a societal issue, it's a global issue, it affects everyone, and it's a development issue. So everyone will need to be on board in order to make sure that we are able to forge ahead with all the various issues.
So before we wrap up, I want to challenge each and every one of you to share one call to action on what's one thing our listeners, whether they are individuals, organizations, or policymakers, or something they can do to accelerate progress for all women and girls.
Okay, so maybe I should start. One big call to action is that if we want to, as a nation, as a country, or even as individuals or communities, if we want to see the kind of progress we expect to see, then we have to be intentional about making sure that everyone is on this, and no one is left behind. So everyone will need to take responsibility for making sure that gender equality is the watchword, and it's of course it's to the benefit of everyone. Perhaps when we have a situation where everyone is on board, our economic status will greatly improve, and then we'll begin to see the progress that we desire across all boards. So we need everyone to be on board, to put their hands together to make sure that we move ahead.
So for me, I would say that a call to action in this case would be for us women. I would speak to the women and girls, right, to understand that the STEM space, the tech space, is for everyone, right? Everyone, women, girls, women with disabilities, everyone. Tech space is for everyone. And it's not just about seeing it from the outside and feeling, oh, I'm not qualified. You know, you cancel yourself before you even get the opportunity to show your skills and all that. I would say my advice would be for you to step into this space. The future of work currently is tech driven, and there are so many opportunities for you to try. You need to step into the tech space. Do it afraid. Do it. Take up those roles. By doing it, you also motivate other people to come on board, right? So you're not just doing it for yourself. You're also doing it for the next generation because they now see a world of work where they believe that a woman can thrive in tech, can thrive in STEM as well. So I would say my advice at this point would be for specifically for women and girls, take up more space to learn more of these things, these skills, right? And speak up about most of the issues they encounter.
I want to say a big thank you for coming to our podcast today. I'm pretty sure our viewers have all been enlightened, having heard everything you have said currently. And I hope when we invite you next time, you'll be able to come to speak on women's rights and gender equality. And thank you, Ms. OJ, for finding the time to talk to us today, enlightening everyone. And to the viewers at home, I hope that with this current episode, you've been enlightened on women's rights, equality, and most likely advocacy on Women's International Day. And thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.